Welcome back, third graders, to our science lessons. Previously, in Lesson 1, we analyzed data from fossils to provide evidence of the organisms and the environments in which they lived long ago. In this lesson, we're going to analyze fossils to determine the types of organisms they represent and the environment in which they lived. Fossils can tell us what kinds of organisms lived in the past. In your book's page 370, we can see a picture of a fossil. At first glance, we can easily tell that it is a fossil of an animal. But what animal could that be? This is a saber-toothed cat, also called a smilodon. It roamed the Earth from around 42 million years ago to as recently as 11,000 years ago. You have probably seen one of these on TV. Do you remember Diego from Ice Age? That's a smilodon. In your book's page 371, we can easily see a fossil of two animals. Some of you might have noticed that these animals are fish. It looks like a big fish eating another smaller fish. This interaction between them was preserved in this fossil. In Exploration 1, we will analyze and observe patterns in fossils that help tell whether the organism was aquatic or terrestrial. An aquatic ecosystem is an underwater ecosystem. Animals living in this ecosystem have features that help them survive there, like fins and flippers. In your book's page 372, we can see an aquatic ecosystem that existed about 400 million years ago. Let's read the captions together to try to guess to which aquatic animal they belong to. A. The head of this fish was covered with armor plates, and the rest of its body was covered with thick scales. We are talking about this fish over here. These are the armor plates that make it easier to protect itself and catch prey. B. These looked like present-day clams. Thick shells protected their soft bodies. Remains of their shells can be found as fossils today. Can you see where their clams are? They're over here. They look just like the clams that we see today. C. Feather stars were related to present-day sea stars. They lived attached to the seafloor. The key word here is attached. This organism used to be stuck to the ocean floor, unable to move around. So it is here and it is related to sea stars, or what you might also know as starfish. And finally, D. These organisms lived inside a long shell. They were related to present-day squids and octopuses. It is this organism over here. It is related to octopuses and squids, which look like this. On page 373, number 3, we're going to match the pictures with the captions underneath, trying to guess how each of these organisms ate. The first caption says, these organisms had feathery arms that caught food particles as they floated within reach. The key words here are feathery arms and floated. So this organism floated in the sea, which means it didn't move. We said earlier that feather stars were attached to the seafloor and were unable to move. So they just float in the water and wait for any food particles to come near so they can eat them. The second caption says, these organisms had tentacles that they used to catch their food, such as fish. The key word here is tentacles, which are the long arm-like structures we see on squids and octopuses. We said earlier that this organism here is related to squids and octopuses, so they use their tentacles as hands to catch their food. And finally, the last caption. These organisms use their powerful jaws to catch and eat sharks and other fish. The key word here is powerful jaws, which we said before are used to protect the organism and make it easier to catch its prey. On the same page, number 4, we're going to give the evidence to support our claims in question 3, meaning how we were able to match the organisms with the correct caption. Number 1 was the largest predator and had powerful jaws. Number 2 has feathery arms and had to wait for food to come within reach. and number 3 has tentacles that it used to catch food. A terrestrial ecosystem is a land ecosystem. Animals living in this ecosystem have features that help them survive there, like legs and wings. In your book's page 374, we can see a terrestrial ecosystem that shows animals and plants from 50,000 to 11,000 years ago. Some of these animals and plants may not be around today, but they may have very close relatives on Earth today. Let's read the captions together to try to guess to which terrestrial animal they belong to. A. This ancient bird was over 1 meter in height. Its wings were almost 3 meters in length. Its legs, neck, and bill or beak were all long. The only bird we see in this picture is this one. You can easily notice its large wings and long features. B. A saber-toothed cat is best known for its long, sharp front teeth called sabers, which could be 30 centimeters in length. We saw this animal at the beginning of our lesson. Its obvious features are its teeth, or its sabers, which are used for hunting. C. By studying plant fossils, scientists have learned that plants from 50,000 to 11,000 years ago may have looked different from modern plants, but functioned in much the same way. Plants like this one here may look similar or different than plants nowadays, but they all functioned in the same way. And finally, D. The dire wolf was about the same length as a present-day gray wolf, but it weighed more. This wolf over here looks very similar to the wolves we see today, but it was a little bit heavier. On the next page, page 375, we have 4 different pictures of fossils. We're going to use these images to compare the organisms from aquatic and terrestrial ecosystems, focusing on how their features and characteristics help them live in their environment. So we have a dire wolf, an ancient fish, oak leaves, and a feather star. As we said before, when comparing between animals living in aquatic environments and those living in terrestrial environments, we should focus on their characteristics that help them survive there. Aquatic organisms had fins and tentacles to move underwater. Some land organisms had legs and could breathe air. Trees had leaves to let them use the sun's energy for food. On the same page, number 7, do you think a dire wolf would be able to live in an aquatic environment? If you said no, then you're right. Fossils of dire wolves reveal that they had legs like those of modern wolves. They did not have characteristics such as fins to help survive in an aquatic environment. In Exploration 2, we're going to look for patterns in the organisms from today that might be linked to organisms from the past. Scientists will often study a present-day animal that is similar to a fossil. This can help them learn how the fossilized organism may have lived. On page 376, in number 8, we can see a picture of a tree called the ginkgo tree, and on the right we can see a ginkgo fossil. Ginkgo trees can reach heights of about 35 meters and live up to 1,000 years. Fossils show that ginkgo trees have not changed very much in the last 100 million years. The plant remained the same throughout these years. Now let's tell how they are alike and how they are different. First, in both pictures, we can clearly see that the shape of the leaf is the same. Their heights have not changed in the years, and they have lived for a long time. As for the difference, they're not that different. On the next page, continuing number 8, we can see a picture of a nautilus, which is a relative to squids. The nautilus uses its tentacles to catch fish, crabs, and shrimp. Similar ancient animals had shells that protected their soft bodies. Fossils of shells reveal that their shells were long. Let's tell how these organisms are alike and how they are different. First, in both pictures, we can see that the shells are striped. Both organisms have similar eyes, and they both have tentacles. As for the difference, These organisms have different shapes for their shells. Now, I want you to skip number 9 on this page and go to page 378. Woolly mammoths lived from about 10,000 to 5 million years ago during the last ice age. Remember Manny from Ice Age? He was a mammoth, and guess what? He was Diego's friend. Modern-day elephants found in Africa and Asia are related to woolly mammoth. We mentioned that in lesson 1. In your book's page 378, number 10, we are going to discuss the difference between mammoths and elephants, and then we're going to circle the feature or characteristic that shows the environment in which these animals lived. Let's start with the woolly mammoth. A. Woolly mammoths had curved tusks that are up to 5 meters long. B. Woolly mammoths were large, having a mass of 8,000 kilograms and reaching heights of 4 meters. C. Woolly mammoths were covered with thick fur to help protect them from the cold temperatures. And finally, D. Woolly mammoths had smaller ears than elephants. We want the feature that tells us the type of climate or weather that the mammoth lived in. In caption C, they said that the mammoths were covered with thick fur to protect it from cold temperatures. So this means that mammoths lived in cold environments. As for the elephants, E, they have tusks that are up to 3.5 meters long. F, elephants are the largest modern land animal. They have a mass of up to 6,000 kilograms and reach heights of 4 meters. G, elephants have gray, wrinkled skin that is sensitive to touch. And finally, H, elephants have very large ears that help keep them cool. Again, remember, we want the feature that tells us about the weather that the elephants' environments have. In caption H, they said that the elephants have large ears to help keep them cool. So this means that elephants live in warm environments. Now it's time for the Do the Math activity. In your book's page 379, number 11, we're going to choose the correct answer from the box to fill in the blanks. We might use an answer twice. We have the following answers to choose from: greater than, less, shorter, longer, the same as, on land, in water, hot, warm, cold, and more. The first sentence says 5 meters blank 3.5 meters. So the woolly mammoth tusks were blank than the tusks of elephants. Which one do you think is greater, 5 meters or 3.5 meters? 5 meters is greater than 3.5 meters. So this means that the woolly mammoth tusks are longer or shorter? Yes, they are longer. The second sentence says 8,000 kilograms blank 6,000 kilograms. So you can conclude that woolly mammoths weighed blank than elephants. Which one do you think is greater, 8,000 kilograms or 6,000 kilograms? Yes, 8,000 kilograms is greater than 6,000 kilograms. So the woolly mammoth weighed more or less than the elephants? Yes, exactly, it weighed more. The third sentence says, both the elephant and woolly mammoth have legs. This is evidence that the woolly mammoth probably lived blank. Remember what we said earlier, that animals that have legs are called terrestrial, which means they lived on land. And finally, the last sentence says, the woolly mammoth was covered in fur. This is evidence that the woolly mammoth probably lived in a blank environment. We said before that the thick fur of a mammoth helped it stay warm when the weather was cold, so the woolly mammoth lived in cold environments. On the same page, number 12, scientists assume that extinct animals and animals living today use similar body structures in the same way. What can you infer about extinct animals by comparing them to animals that are alive today? we could infer how the animals moved, what they ate, and whether they lived on land or in water. That's it for this video. In the next video, we will be learning more about fossils and how they show the patterns of life in the past.